Hello everyone, it is Leon.
And Joel.
You have reviewed Dead Space 3. First of all, what did you give it?
I gave it 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10. That might be a lower score than some people are expecting then.
Yeah, it's the lowest score we've given a Dead Space game, and it was lower than I was hoping to give it, to be honest. It's not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination, but it's slightly formulaic as far as Dead Space goes now. If you've played the other games, you'll know pretty much exactly what to expect at all times, and also they've messed with some of the fundamental gameplay aspects for the worse, I would say. It basically works the same way as it ever did. You know, you're in space, you're in corridors like this, fighting necromorphs like this, but as you'll see from that, everything now is quite well armoured, so their limbs don't come off with one shot. You have to do at least 2 or 3, and they also, everything just rushes straight into your face as soon as you get in a room.
The dismemberment was like, that's a fundamental thing, isn't it? It's hard enough to take the limbs off anyway because they run at you and you're panicking, so the idea of then...
See, look at that. Yeah. That was at least 2 shots to the leg, and this isn't actually that far into the game. In fact, this is very early on in the game, very early on. So even the early necromorphs you meet are too tough to take limbs off with one shot, which basically nerfs the fundamental differentiator between this combat and other games' combat. You know, you don't shoot the head, you shoot the limbs, they come off, and they do still come off, but they just take longer, and that basically means, combined with the fact that all the necromorphs now just rush at your face and you're fighting more of them in any given space, basically means there's a lot of backpedaling, getting stuck in corners, and it means the combat's a lot less enjoyable than it used to be. You have to spam stasis quite a lot of the time just to make things manageable, and it's not very tactical. You know, you used to be able to look around and go, right, I've got 2 of these guys, 1 of this guy, 1 of this guy. I know these guys move quickest, so I'll stasis them, take this guy's leg off with a quick shot, hobble him a bit. See there, 2 shots. It used to be, and that, especially those spindly arm limbs, they used to come flying off them.
Because that was its kind of mechanic, wasn't it? You panicked, you shot a bit too much, you missed a limb and took a head off.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And so now it's just not quite the same. They haven't nerfed it completely. It's not massively different.
It sounds like a bit more shooty.
It's those subtle things that if you've played and liked the old Dead Space games, you will notice and go, this isn't quite as good. And at first you'll go, I'm not quite sure why, but that is why.
So okay, so the big change though obviously is the co-op stuff. We're about to see Carver appear any second now.
Yeah, so there's another new playable character. He is extremely gruff and rather annoying actually, especially when you're playing in single player. He just gives you a lot of flack and a lot of abuse, and you know, he's a bit of a meat-headed marine type. He's quite fun to play as though, and obviously as the story goes on, you sort of warm to him slightly, and he redeems himself.
Does he have different abilities? You say he's fun to play as?
No, he has a different gun. He has he starts with like a heavy sort of machine gun type thing, which again, usually in Dead Space you wouldn't particularly like, but is quite useful.
Yeah.
Especially when there are sort of loads of enemies coming towards you, and it is quite enjoyable to be able to take things on 2-player. You can manage the crowds a lot better. The boss fights, which are pretty appalling in a single player game, I have to say, are a lot more enjoyable with 2. And to be honest, as most games are, if you've got a headset and someone you know and like, and someone who's decent at Dead Space, it's pretty fun. If you get stuck with a complete newbie and they don't know what they're doing, it's extremely annoying because they're just sort of wandering around shooting the heads, not picking up the loot and stuff. But yeah, you can work together quite well. Also, and we'll come to this more in a minute, the the weapon crafting system allows you to make specifically co-op tailored weapons, so you can make things that will give your partner health or add to their sort of stasis effectiveness and things like that. So a lot of the game is actually tailored to the co-op.
So you can craft like kind of a teamwork element beyond just
absolutely
shooting things.
Yeah, and there are several, I think sort of between 3 and 5 hours of co-op exclusive play that you'll only see if you're playing in 2-player. As well as aspects of the game that show up differently in co-op than in single player. Like if you're playing as Carver, you'll be able to see just how badly Isaac's having his breakdown, which you can't really tell in the single player game.
Okay.
So here we are. This is the weapon crafting system.
Yes.
The workbenches are absolutely everywhere. It's amazing how well stocked these outer space mining colonies are with workbenches. So basically, you walk around the environment, you pick up bits, you pick up tungsten and various metals and gels, somatic gels and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You also pick up upgrade circuits which are ready made for you, and then you've got 2 choices basically. You can make weapons out of the blueprints that the game gives you, as long as you've got the requisite amount of materials, or you can basically make your own and pick and choose. So you can make weapons depending on your play style, which is quite good in a way, in that, you know, you can. I ended up with a Ripper, which is the saw blade with a stasis attachment, so it would slow down everything as I tore it apart with the blades. And then I had a plasma cutter with an underslung flamethrower for crowd control. So I mean, that's quite good.
Does it feel like it's quite the options are open? You're not
The options are very open. The only trouble with it is that you can make guns that are too good, and that basically takes away the challenge of the game.
Really?
And you can also craft medipacks and stasis packs. By the end of the game, you'll have so much material that you can make so many medipacks that basically there's no challenge anymore, because you'll just be able to heal yourself almost indefinitely.
So has it? They made it too easy then, almost.
They've made it too easy in that they give you too many materials, and also you get these little scavenger bots which you can send out to do your harvesting for you. They come back with loads of materials. I think you get 3 towards the end of the game.
Wow.
And yeah, so I think at the end of the game I had enough stuff to make 50 med packs, which clearly doesn't lead to much of a challenge, even when you're supposed to be fighting like the end of game bosses and mega tough bits.
Yeah.
So it's a problem. The system works well and is a nice idea. They've just been a bit too generous with how much stuff they let you make, and also the ammo system is now universal. Ammo is just ammo and works with all the guns.
I didn't like the sound of that.
Which is a really bad idea for a survival horror game, because it's all about resource management, and now you basically never run out of ammo for anything at all.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here. That was quite a sort of action sort of sequence.
Yeah, so that'll look familiar if you played Dead Space before. You do these big, fast-paced descents through space. Well, not really descents, and dodge the debris, basically.
I mean, I always remember, space being as, you know, you would go through little drifty sections. You'd have like maybe a minute or two of air, and it would be quite tense and quite atmospheric. Yeah. That looked like kind of God of War in space.
Yeah, basically. And there was a scene like that in Dead Space 2. That happens 2 or 3 times during the game, but what is different this time, which you'll see here, and I think in quite a few times during the game, is it's almost like a hub structure. Basically, you have to put together a spaceship to get to Tau Volantis in the first place.
Right.
And while you're doing that, you have to float to various ships and build and to sort of get the parts. But what you can also do is you get optional missions.
Yeah.
So you get in this little sort of tiny little spaceship, and you can fly it to different parts of this huge space station, do an optional mission here, go and scavenge some resources from there before you actually land on Tau Volantis, and then that's sort of the second act of the game.
Yeah.
Really, this bit's like the setup. You're visiting this sort of hub station, so there is more flying about in space than there was before. Definitely.
I guess as well, if you're on Tau Volantis, there's not going to be so much of the zero-G stuff.
No, there isn't. Once you get there is a little bit more of it, and yeah, it comes back, but there's a big section once you're on Tau Volantis where you're basically on the ground the whole time.
So let's talk a bit more about Tau Volantis. We saw a little bit of it earlier, daylight, snow, open areas. That looks a lot different from Dead Space.
Yeah, although actually there's not that much of that. In between, when you're travelling from sort of objective to objective, you will go out in the snow and sort of through the camp. But once you're closing in on various objectives, you are generally funneled back indoors, and it becomes quite familiar. So sort of towards the end, you're in this sort of, I guess, this research facility, and you have to go to the different wings to collect stuff. So while you're travelling from, you know, the geology wing to the blah 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 wing, then you're out and about. But as soon as you get nearer your objective, you're then funneled back into very familiar dark corridors, which is probably a good thing, really, because it's kind of nice to be out in the sun and the snow for a bit, but it's not the most scary thing, you know. Necromorphs pop out of the snow, but you can kind of see them, and you can see where they're going to come from.
Yeah.
And you've also got a big space to run around and run away from them, and that sort of loses the claustrophobic element of the game.
Okay.
Which has always been quite prominent.
We've just seen there that like a co-op bit where they split up. How does that sort of work? When do you have a lot of sections where you're pushed off in different directions?
Yeah, it's actually kind of laughable when you're playing in single player, because you'll be standing there with the group, and they'll go, let's go and do this, and it'll sort of keep you locked where you are. As everyone trots off, you'll turn around, no one will be there anymore.
Yeah.
You'll walk outside and you'll go, oh, they're on a bridge, wonder if that bridge will collapse, and then it collapses, and you and Carver are forcibly split up, and then you're brought back together. Because
that's been one of my worries. It does sort of sound like you won't get the full game if you play it in single player.
It's a little bit like that. Like I said, there's a few hours of exclusive co-op stuff, but I didn't feel shortchanged by the game. You know,
right.
It's a good 10 hours long. It's classic Dead Space single player fare. it's just been watered down slightly, and also it's now very familiar. You know, you'll be able to see where the scares come from if you play Dead Space. You'll be able to see they're going to burst out of there, or hit this, a couple more will burst out of here, and blah blah blah. So it's not new enough, and they've made some changes for the worse. And if the series is to continue, they are going to need to freshen things up a little bit.
Okay, so 7 out of 10. It's a good game in the series.
It's a good game and a worthwhile survival horror game, because there aren't that many out there these days. But it's certainly a step backwards rather than a positive evolution for the Dead Space series.